Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here. It's lovely to see such a big audience. That's terrific. And thank you, Roland. Tax treatment may change in the future. Oh, you can say that again, eh? Well, I haven't actually had a look at the King's speech yet, but I'm sure there's going to be some interesting little things in there. So today is actually a really interesting day to be presenting about Cohort, because it is actually our results day. Good grief, I can see our chairman in the background. Good evening, Nick. So I will be starting with because I understand that not everyone will be familiar with Cohort, I'm going to start with an introduction to the business. I'll talk a little bit about what we do, about our structure, about our operating concept. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the technologies that we've been developing, because I think it's important to understand what it is we actually do as opposed to just our size and shape. And then I will talk about and summarise the results that we've been announcing to the city today. Simon is here with me, Cohort's finance director, and he will be able to assist me in answering any more detailed financial questions you might have at the end of the presentation. And if it's a really difficult one, I shall invite the chairman to come up as well. Just before I start, I might mention that the picture behind the title here shows some of our products being assembled at our factory in Barnstaple. This is something that we call the crate array. That's crate with a K, so it's a snake rather than a packing box. And it is a lightweight towed array sonar used for detecting ships and submarines at great range. And from me saying that, you'll have guessed, if you hadn't known already, that we are in fact a defence technology business. And this is sort of us on a slide, if you like. What we try and do is to, well, it says there in white on the red, combine the innovation and responsiveness of smaller independent businesses with the stability, shared knowledge, wider market access and lower funding costs of a listed group. We are a group of 6 businesses. The headquarters of the business is just to the west of Reading, where Simon and I are based. Each of the businesses operates with a significant degree of independence within a framework of financial and other controls to ensure that our businesses all meet the regulatory requirements of being a UK business, of being a listed business, of operating in the defence industry, all of those important things. But they have a lot of autonomy to make decisions within those financial controls. The reason for that is that it enables them to make decisions quickly without reference to higher authority when dealing with customers. And customers in the defence sector really find that valuable. Typically, our customers are large, unwieldy organisations like Ministries of Defence or enormous defence prime contractors. They find it rather difficult to make fast decisions, and the fact that we can react and deal with their problems more quickly is very attractive to them. Independent, small to medium-sized businesses, which all of our 6 are also innovative and agile, able to do all of those things which we love small businesses for. What we try and do is keep that agility and innovation while adding in the benefits of being part of a larger group as well. And by that I mean financial stability. As you'll see, we've got a strong balance sheet and very strong banking relationships as well. The ability to interface with customers at a much higher level than they'd be able to do. The benefits of working together. So all of the senior management of our businesses meet very regularly as well to swap ideas and look at opportunities for cooperation. All of those things are of great value to them as well. So that's the concept that we operate as a group. We have a small and experienced team, 15 of us, in our headquarters in Reading, with a lot of professional expertise, a lot of industry expertise as well. But essentially, we don't try and do things for the group. It's those businesses themselves where the value is really generated. Our strategy is growing organically, and as I'll show you, we've been doing that, and also through acquisition over our lifetime. Since 2006, when we IPO'd, we've done a number of acquisitions and moved from just 1 company up to 6 in the group. We provide a wide range of defence equipment and services as well. I'll talk you through some of those in a moment, for customers across the world. The UK is our largest market, taking a bit over half of our output last year, but we export across Asia, in the Middle East, the Americas, and increasingly in Europe and NATO, Europe particularly as well. And our people, which is our great resource really, because we are fundamentally a people business, that's how we create value, a bit over 1,300 people, and many of those are highly qualified engineers and scientists, the people who come up with the solutions and products that meet our customers' needs. So our 6 businesses are brigaded as 2 divisions for reporting purposes. I'll talk you quickly through each of them so you've got a picture of the kind of things that it is that we do. Starting with our communications and intelligence business division, that comprises 3 businesses, EID, MAS and MCL. EID is based in Portugal, just south of Lisbon. They've been going for many years. They produce advanced communication systems for navies and for armies. So typically the kind of thing they would do, soldier radios, individual soldier radios, the special units that infantry soldiers use to combine power and data and communications that are needed on the modern battlefield, as well as large-scale communication systems for surface ships used by navies, submarines and so on as well. MAS is based in St Neots and also operates in Lincoln. MAS is our only business focused primarily on services. MAS operates through 4 divisions. Electronic warfare operational support, which is all about providing special countermeasures to defend ships and aircraft against missile attacks, so programming the jammers that they use, calculating and working out the best use of disposable consumable items like chaff and flares. They also do cyber defence and cyber security. They design and execute many of the UK's major exercises that the Strategic Command in the UK runs regularly to simulate an international crisis using computer simulation. And they support the UK's nuclear deterrent as well. And MAS is our largest single contributor to profit, I should say. And then we've got MCL, which has a completely different business model again. It's our smallest business in terms of people, only about 50, and they operate by building relationships with non-UK technology providers and working with them to provide support and additional features to that equipment, supplying into UK government customers. And then we have our second division, Sensors and Effectors, again made up of 3 businesses, Chess, ELAC and SEA. Chess is based down in Horsham in Sussex. They provide surveillance systems using optical and electro-optical and sometimes radar systems to detect and track targets, elusive targets like drones in the air, perhaps in complex environments, or targets on the ground, or targets on the surface of the sea. And they track those and provide fire control solutions to weapons. They've been having a strong run recently because of the strong demand for countering unmanned air systems, which has really grown since we've seen the capacity and potency of unmanned air systems in the Ukrainian conflict. ELAC Sonar, based in Kiel in northern Germany, they supply navies around the world with sonar systems, especially for submarines. Their largest contract at the moment is supplying the Italian Navy with the complete sonar systems for all of its new purchase of submarines. And then we have SEA, based out in the West Country, in Somerset and in North Devon. They provide a number of different systems for primarily naval users, as we mentioned, transport also there, but things like torpedo launchers, communication systems for all of the UK's nuclear submarines. Very importantly, a system to defend surface ships against missile attack, a decoy launcher known as Ancilia, and I'll say a little bit more about that. So those are our 6 businesses, and that gives you, I hope, an idea of the kind of things that we produce for our customers. Now, one of the things that's very important for us to do, as you'll have gathered from the kind of activities that I've just described, is to invest in technology for growth and to grow and develop the kind of capability our systems offer. It won't have escaped you that the world has become rather a more dangerous place in the last 2 years, since particularly the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022. I mean, that's one major driver for demand for our products and services. Another is the aggressiveness and assertiveness now of China's behaviour, really across from the Indian Ocean to Australasia, but very much focused on the South China Sea and on Taiwan. And it's those two sort of major demand poles that create and have generated increasing demand for the kind of systems that we provide. And in particular, that's influenced things like the need for counter-drone systems, as mentioned in Ukraine, the need to defend against a missile attack as well. So here are some examples of the technology we've been developing. On the left here, you can see a counter-drone system. The small optical sensor on the top of that turret is provided by our business Chess, and that detects and tracks drones as they move through the sky. It's got artificial intelligence-based software that allows it to track them in a complex environment, for instance, moving behind trees and other obstacles, and provide targeting to that gun. That particular gun is a 40mm Bofors gun. The same system can also be used with radio frequency jammers, which will inhibit the drone's communications or control links as well. But if you want a permanent solution, then I think that 40mm does the job pretty well. And as I've mentioned, demand for that is really, really strong at the moment from a number of countries, particularly around Europe, NATO Europe, Central and Eastern Europe. A related product produced by Chess is for battlefield surveillance and target tracking. And that takes a similar kind of tracker and mounts it on a mast on a vehicle. And that mast then can be lifted above the tree line to be able to detect land targets or important assets of intelligence value. And then it can give a very, very precise coordinate for those targets. It can identify them at considerably long ranges, very, very long ranges for an optical sensor. And it can also designate them using a laser designator to be dealt with by a smart weapon of some kind. So that's another product that we've developed. The central picture that you can see there, which is perhaps the least exciting of the three, represents, in fact, something which is one of the more exciting products that we do. That is a panel of a sonar, submarine sonar, developed by our business ELAC in Kiel. Now, in order to improve the sensitivity of sonars, they have mounted many thousands of small sensors in these panels that will go onto a submarine, and that enables them to detect submarine targets at very long ranges. It's also controlled by software which does beam forming and includes some unique characteristics which only ELAC will be able to do, which enables you to locate a target very, very accurately at long range as well. So that's been a really impressive piece of technology. I think as far as conventional submarines are concerned, non-nuclear submarines are concerned, ELAC sonars are pretty much the best available anywhere. I wanted to mention sensors for uncrewed systems. From our conversations with naval customers and our attendance at exhibitions and conferences, it's become clear, very clear, not least the Royal Navy, but many navies around the world are looking to add more and more uncrewed systems to their inventories. And there are many good reasons for that. Uncrewed systems are much less expensive than fully crewed systems. They can be sent to places that are too dangerous, or you would not want to risk a fully manned surface ship or a submarine. But they're only any use if they can communicate and if they can actually either gather their information or do something useful, like launch a munition while they're there. Now, the picture that I showed you right at the beginning of the presentation, the crate array designed by SEA, is perfect because it is very, very lightweight. You can hold 50 meters of it under your arm, as opposed to a traditional towed array sonar, which is a much larger diameter and weighs many, many tons. So it's low power, lightweight, and we see that as being a perfect sensor for these uncrewed systems that are growing and growing in importance. And then finally, enhancing naval vessel survivability. Over on the right there, you can see a system developed by SEA called Ancilia. In fact, it was developed both by SEA and Chess. Both of them had a strong technical input into that. Chess into the stabilised positioner, which enables it to remain steady as the ship moves around, and SEA into the launcher itself. We announced that win back in March. It was our largest ever win as a group, £135 million. And that will fit out many of the Royal Navy's surface ships and protect them against the new, very severe hostile missile threats from hypersonic missiles or ballistic missiles that have been developed by the Russians and by the Chinese. So that gives you an idea of some of the technology we've been investing in. We increased our investment by 26% last year. That, I should say, a lot of that investment is actually funded by customers, around 3/4 of it. That's a feature of the industry. Often customers are prepared to fund development of products that meet their particular needs. And overall, I think we're well positioned to meet the demand and the way that it's evolving. I should also mention at this point as well that it's not just technology we invest in, we remain interested in, if we can find the right ones, doing carefully targeted acquisitions to accelerate our growth as well. We're not a sort of acquisition machine that does one every 6 months. We're cautious and careful, and only a very small number of the opportunities that we see will actually take to a full acquisition. But nevertheless, that's a strong part of our strategy. And as you'll see in a moment, we have the resources to be able to do that. So, here are the results that we announced to the city this morning. We hit 2 really important milestones for us. This was the first time, well, 3 I should say. This was the first time that we've achieved over 200 million of revenue in a year, over 20 million of operating profit in a year, and over 500 million now of our order book as it closed at the end of the year. This is for the year ended in April 2024. So those were all record numbers for us. Growth of 11% in revenue and profit from last time. Adjusted EPS up even more for reasons that I'll leave Simon to explain. But the really eye-catching figure there is the order intake. I mean, we thought we did pretty well last year with 221 million, but over 390 million of order intake, taking the order book up to that level. And that momentum has continued since the end of the financial year. Since April, we've taken on an additional 70 million of order intake, and that means that our order book is now at over 560 million pounds. So as at the end of the last financial year, our current year revenue was covered up to about 90%. And as of now, it's covered more than 95%. So we've had a very strong year for order intake. And that reflects exactly what I was saying earlier about the growing demand for defence equipment being driven by the world geopolitical scene. Operating cash flow was strong last year as well, at 22 million, and we have net funds of 23.1 million at the end of the year. And coupled to our bank facilities, that gives us really quite significant firepower if we need it for acquisition purposes. And I should say as well that we've grown our dividend every year since IPO, and this year was no exception. We've never grown it by less than 10%, in fact. So we've grown it by 10% again this year, the full year dividend of 14.8 pence. So that brings me more or less to the end of what I wanted to say. I just really wanted to sort of summarise the investment case for you on a slide as my final slide. Growth in revenue and profit, well, continued growth in revenue and profit, because our revenue and profit have been growing for several years, and we're now at a record level. The record order book, I've mentioned to you already, but beyond that, we've got a really strong pipeline of opportunities. We see new opportunities for order intake coming close. We see long-term opportunities or longer-term opportunities for Ancilia, for example, that £135 million contract. I think there are many export opportunities for that that could take us to that level again and perhaps beyond. We have a strong balance sheet for investing in product development, production capacity, which it's quite possible we will need to enhance, as well as targeted acquisitions. And it also gives our customers confidence in dealing with us and issuing these large contracts, knowing that we'll be able to execute them because we've got the resources to be able to do so. And after the end of that good year, we've had a decent start, particularly in terms of order intake in the current 24-25 year. We are maintaining our growth expectations for the year, and we see that there could be some upside because in May we completed a small acquisition of a business called Interactive Technical Services, which will add a little bit of extra upside, and that's being integrated into our business MCL. Beyond that, because of the positive demand environment and the continuing need for defence equipment, which we see continuing into the future, we see the opportunity for significant further progress in 25-26 and beyond. I see I have 1 minute left, so I've timed it more or less right. If anyone has any questions, Simon and I would be very happy to do our best to answer. So thank you for your attention.
That gentleman there, yeah. Bring it towards here.
Hello, is it?
It's on.
Is this working? Thank you. Are you allowed to tell us who your customers are?
The question was, am I allowed to tell you who our customers are? The answer to that is yes in some cases and not in others. We have, the largest customer, as I've said, is the UK Defence Establishment, Ministry of Defence, both directly and indirectly through prime contractors like BAE Systems. We supply to many countries around the world. We have domestic markets in both Portugal and also in Germany. Those are smaller than the market in the UK for us, but also important. And our export markets, very strong in Southeast Asia, in Australasia. And that's important because that's an area where defence spending is growing very sharply in countries like South Korea and Japan as well, which we see as important potential markets for us. We're also strong in NATO Europe for reasons that are fairly obvious, for doing some of the things that I've just talked about. And we also have some activities elsewhere as well, in places like South America and Canada. We're quite a substantial exporter around the world. That's okay. Hello. Yeah.
Hi, you mentioned BAE, but
Yes.
obviously a lot larger than yourselves. But how would you say you compare with similar operators, like for example, MS International? What would be your unique selling points compared to these other smaller defence companies?
You're thinking of MSI?
Yes, MI.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, they're very different. They're a focused business with a relatively small number of products focused on a particular area. So, MSI, if they ever decided to throw in the towel, would fit rather nicely into Cohort, I would say. But that's another story. So MSI has done rather well recently. They've had some really good wins, but they're quite a different sort of business to us. Our operating model is rather different to them. It allows us to operate in a number of different areas, to have these different businesses operating. If you compare us to BAE Systems, we are, as you've rightly noted, we're a bit smaller than them. But nevertheless, the kind of business model that we've pursued, which, if you like, maximises the freedom of businesses to make good decisions within a set of controls that enable us, properly to report financially and ensure that we're within all of the regulations that we have to stay within, allows us to minimise overhead. Whereas some larger businesses like BAE Systems and Thomis, well, they make something of being able to sort of have strategic control over all of their operations, right from the wheelhouse at the top in London in BAE's case. That's an approach we quite deliberately eschew, because we think that it actually works better to make decisions nearer the customer and not to load them over with heavy overheads. I hope that gives you a sort of idea.
Thank you. This lady here, please.
Hi. I'm interested to know what would be your approach to cyber risk, whether you consider that as a sort of increasing and therefore expenditure that you would have to spend, and how would you balance that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I'm always tempted to ask the chairman to come up at this stage, but I'll refrain. But because it has been an important topic of conversation at board level, there certainly is a cyber threat from a number of hostile actors, be they state or criminal, in the UK. And it's something that we take seriously and that we aim to ensure that we've got not only the policies but also the actions that protect us against cyber risk. I'm happy to say that one of the businesses in our group, Mass, is actually a world expert in terms of cyber risk, and they've got some excellent people who deal with this for other customers as well. So we've got a great source of internal advice. But it's something that I wouldn't say it sort of keeps me awake at night, but it definitely is a real risk and something that we have to be aware of.
Thank you. That gentleman at the back, please.
Yeah, very quickly. Thank you very much. I've been using Tom Clancy books in my TV broadcasts on the Ukraine war, including before the 24th of February. That perhaps explains why I'm almost certainly going to buy shares with my SIT. Thank you. By heavens, are you in the right places at the right time? But my question is, what market are you on? Are you 250? You're not AIM, presumably. You're 250?
No, we're AIM.
You are AIM.
Yes,
thank you.
Yes, so we're IHT compatible.
Thank you. Yeah.
We're in the AIM 50, so the larger part of the index. Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
How much of your manufacturing is in-house, and how much, if any, is outsourced? And two, in view of the fact that your order book is increasing quite rapidly, do you envisage any kind of bottlenecks in manufacturing capacity or the hiring of suitable qualified technicians and scientists?
Okay. Let me answer the second one first. Yes, the order book is growing. At the moment, we have grown our overall employee numbers quite significantly over the last few years. About 30%, I think, Simon, over the last 3 years. So we're up to a little over 1,300 people now. I think that we are still doing some recruiting, but that more or less gives us the resource that we need to deliver the current order book. In terms of manufacturing capacity, yes, I think we have sufficient of that, but it is more than possible that we may need to expand. We're not a capital-intensive business, and I'll come on to answering the first question that you asked in a moment. Our manufacturing operations, they vary across the group. From the lightest touch is MCL, Marlborough Communications, where some of what they do is simply taking in products from a supplier and passing on to the MOD with some value add around perhaps documentation and support. In other cases, they do add significant design expertise. Right up to ELAC Zonar on the other end of the spectrum, where they do really comprehensive manufacturing operations in-house, working from almost raw material level. So it does vary quite a lot. But the majority of it tends to focus on final assembly and test, with quite a lot of intermediate manufacturing, electronics manufacture, for instance, outsourced to the local supply chain. And I emphasize local supply chain because that's important. Do we see constraints? They peaked just after COVID, and in some cases during COVID as well. Much less so now. We've adjusted our ways of working. So, for example, we tend to be a bit freer and earlier in buying stock than we might have been before. We could talk about the risks associated perhaps with the Chinese invasion of Taiwan and what that might do to semiconductors separately. That's another story altogether. But the answer is, at the moment, the supply chain works pretty smoothly.
Thank you. This gentleman here, please.
Could I ask a straightforward accounting question? What is your net asset value at this moment in time?
Good grief.
That's a straight question.
No, it is a very straight question. You caught me a bit on the hop there. I mean, the overall asset value is about 106 million, of which goodwill is about 60. And net assets actually are probably quite low. You're probably looking at around about 15, 20 million. And that would be mostly in stock. We tend to have a lot of customer funding. That's the other good thing about the defence industry, particularly most of our customers will fund our working capital. I mean, two of our businesses, MCL and Mass, work on virtually negative working capital. It's the other 4 that tend to take more cash requirement. So it's pretty low actually for our level of turnover. I think generally we have about a month of working capital in our revenue.
What does that equate to with the price of your share?
What's the price at the moment? About
£8.40.
Straightforward
question.
No, about, yeah, just doing the maths in my head. About £8.40, so whatever the market cap at the moment is 320 million. So net assets are about 8%, 7%, something like that.
Sorry, about 8%?
Yeah, the top end, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you. The gentleman here.
Thank you for the presentation. It's very interesting. I'm thinking of the immediate future. It's a hypothetical one. Say Trump becomes the president,
Yes.
and stops the Ukraine war and Middle East. What will be your position then?
Yes, it's a very interesting question, and rather a pertinent one at the moment, I have to say. The answer is that no one knows how the Ukraine war is going to end. But I think we can postulate a few things. And that is that when it does come to a conclusion, as one hopes that it will, there will be a border somewhere between the western border of Ukraine and its eastern border. And it will be a border on which side, on both sides of which no one is very happy. I would expect it would be a heavily armed border and a tense border. So we're talking about a situation akin to pre-1989 in Central Europe and the inner German border, when long-term defence spending levels were about twice what they are now. So that's how I would expect in the medium term things to sort of eventually come to hot conflict to eventually come to a conclusion. But we're talking about a situation much more akin to the Cold War than we are about between 1989 and now, or 2022, I would say. And when you add in the situation in Asia as well, and the tensions that are growing there, I mean, if Donald Trump wants to close down the Ukraine war, not because he's a pacifist, because he wants to divert his resources over to the other side of his country to deal with the challenges he faces in the Indo-Pacific, and that will continue to be generating demand as well. So I think we're in a new world, and it's not a great world. One of the things that slightly makes me happy about is the fact that as a defence company we can do something about it by helping to strengthen the security of our country and its allies.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Andy. Thank you very much.